What I want to start off with is by presenting an idea of a traditional Muslim paradigm. I often find when working in the Muslim community that we actually talk in different parallel universes depending from where we come from, depending what our expectations are. And often what happens, there's this conversation that we have between us, which is like Muslim speak. When we talk and we put Muslim in the center, then, and we then look back to our cultures and our heritage, and we know what that means. And what happens often is, because we're living in a globalized world, every country on the planet is changing constantly, so there are different conversations about reality happening all over the world. And diaspora communities, in particular Muslim diaspora communities, means that we are no longer necessarily living in cultures that we were familiar with. So things are changing constantly. And what I would like to suggest when we talk about marriage and family life in a Muslim context, historically, and even still today, but it's changing, but historically, family and marriage were like the center of our relationships with each other. We operated as in families, communities, and our social groups revolved around that. So when people were looking to get married, even if maybe the potential bride and groom may not have known each other very well, they both would have been embedded in a known culture, Muslim culture. They would have understood the culture, people would have understood the relationships, and if somebody was suggested to somebody else, the chances are that the adults who were making the suggestions knew these people very well and understood the context that they would be living their family life in. So therefore, you eliminated the possibility of conflict, and that's when everybody understood that. Within that framework, we tended not to look at the bigger human picture in the world generally, and we didn't tend to focus on the individual. So therefore, modern language today, we talk a lot about the individual, but in our more traditional culture, the individual was part of a wider framework of interconnected relationships, which actually was of benefit to everybody. They worked in a certain logic, in a certain framework, which made sense. And how did that work? So you had religion, culture, traditions, family structures, and you had socioeconomic conditions. Within the more Islamically inspired cultures, you would have found that these worked in harmony with each other. We didn't have economic structures where, usually if you think about, and maybe some of you may still even remember some of these, or maybe even still live in them, the economic structures would have been near to the home, often trade, often crafts, so it was family-centric, people working together. So therefore, people weren't traveling 2 hours to work and 2 hours back, or sort of often even traveling abroad as much as people do now. So therefore, trade and family life, the sustenance of family life, the financial side was local, and people were like, you know, they connected with each other at that level. So we saw this interconnecting weaving of complex social relationships within, inspired from our Islamic traditions, and how we implemented these within our local cultures and local frameworks we find ourselves in. So what I would like to pose a question is that possibly we're living in a period of where this paradigm has been lost, or is being lost. It's no longer there in the way that we imagine, and in a past time in that way.